The ETF could be very close. Today, we're going to be breaking down what the possibility is for maybe an ETF tomorrow and what kind of impact that, of course, would have on the markets. We'll break into all this good stuff for you guys today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. If you guys are looking at long-term holding, this is one of the places you can do it, and that is with a crypto IRA. Check out their website, which is itrustcapital.com. And they've been growing a lot, 7 billion in transactions, 200,000 accounts. Of course, this is self-directed IRAs, so of course you can invest in Bitcoin, Ethereum, precious metals, all those kind of things just by going over to iTrust Capital. Make sure and use our link down below. It's going to give you guys a $100 funding reward just by using the link down there. So check it out and see if it works for you. All right, so I want to get into a couple of topics today. And one of the things that has really been brewing here recently, of course, is the timing of ETFs and what that might look like. And now remember, we have a lot of ETF applicants, many of which may be in a position right now to either get an approval, an extension, a delay, or a denial. All of these potentially right now at risk. We're going to break out what that possibility looks like, all that good stuff. This first tweet right here gets into a couple of things that has been happening, which is really more of just the paperwork side of it. But BlackRock filed their S1 prospectus for its spot Ethereum ETF now with the SEC. Again, this is a process of a variety of government filings within the Securities and Exchange Commission that goes through a very big litany of just step one, step two. This is another one that goes in the right direction. So again, just another positive move overall. Also want to hit a tweet here from Eric Balchunas from Bloomberg. And this is kind of an interesting statement, a little bit cryptic. Let me kind of zoom in on that for you guys a little bit. If his next one, he's talking about Gary Gensler's office hours, if his next one is for trading and markets, I think that could be a wrap. So I think what Eric is kind of alluding to is that Gary and the SEC, Gary Gensler and the SEC, strategically put out these little video clips of office hours, and they're talking about different things, everything from crypto and scams and all sorts of things, and then they go into investing into securities and making sure the point is that they seem to be prepping what then hits the market usually in news. So it's very similar in terms of their editorial line. So maybe Eric is right there. If this next one is on trading and market, maybe we'll have an ETF coming our way. Another tweet here is Tech Talk Macro. He hits on a couple of things: significance of the spot Bitcoin ETF and other altcoin ETFs if they're eventually approved. ETF approval scenario: initial surge in demand due to institutional inflows, increased market accessibility for retail, improved regulatory clarity somewhat, and investor confidence. I think that would be true. And then higher market growth due to these factors. Now, this is something that we had a video of an investment advisor on our show, a guy by the name of Andrew Horowitz. Go back and check that video out. And he was less bullish on the idea of an ETF. There was two things he was kind of looking at, is that it may not necessarily draw in traditional investors, but it could draw in institutional capital into a lot of these mutual funds and other instruments, from the finance side that could be involving this with exposure to Bitcoin. So that is one area I think that would be very interesting. But I'd love to get you guys' take on this. Do you feel like ETF will have an immediate impact on Bitcoin long term, or is this one of those where you see a big flash on the asset and then a crash? Drop some comments down below and make sure and smash a like if you guys do like these kind of breakdowns. Further in his tweet here, no ETF approval scenario, continued growth at current rates. He does not think that this is going to cause a major retraction. I believe that it would. I think we would see a pretty significant slice into Bitcoin for that. But obviously, it would be a big miss by institutional investment. I think this is one of those things that I don't necessarily see this happening, but it could be on there for sure. Also, another tweet right here. This is Matt Hogan. ETF positive for both Bitcoin and ETH, but it means more to Bitcoin. Two reasons. Bitcoin is likely to be the first to suck up most of the oxygen, I think, just because of the awareness. This is particularly true since many financial pros don't know the difference between Bitcoin and ETH. I would agree with that, but I don't know. I wouldn't put it past the groups that are out there really selling this in. And what I mean by that is, remember, the marketing push and bonanza that we're going to see hit the financial news wires, all the sites, influencers, et cetera, are really starting to make it their way out there to make more people aware of it. I think it could open up a possibility for Ethereum. But Bitcoin's killer app today is a way to store wealth outside the fiat system. I think, Ethereum does the same thing, but an ETF does boost its actual use. So if an Ethereum's killer app, its functionality and the ETF doesn't impact that. I would disagree with that. I think that Ethereum is one that could get impacted significantly, mainly because of the opportunity that many of the emerging investors could bring into an ETF could validate a lot of what's happening there. I want to go to a few clips here, and this is going to get into a couple of things. One I want to go over to is around the SEC itself and whether or not they are ready to pull the trigger. Listen in.
Or how confident are you that you're going to get approval?
Well, something has changed. So we had put in a number of times a filing, and we were just denied. Never got any questions, really never got any response. This time, this summer, we got questions back from the SEC. Now, normally when you get questions from the SEC, you're just saying, oh my goodness. We were thrilled to get questions back because it means they're engaged now. The level of sophistication of their questions suggested, okay, now they're moving deeply into this. And we answered those questions. We have not heard back. That's a good sign too. They never tell you that you've satisfied them, but if you don't hear from them, that usually means that you have satisfied the answers to the requests. That was different, and it says, okay, there's movement, and we are the first in line. Just because we kept refiling, others gave up.
All right, so Cathie's hitting on a couple of milestones there, the big changes there, but she also has a concern around the SEC and even Grayscale. So a lot has been happening. Obviously, Grayscale won their case against the SEC, but at the same time, that could be a little bit of a problem. And we're going to go to this next clip. Listen to what she had to say about this.
But we know Grayscale wants to convert to an ETF. I don't know how practical that is, or if the SEC will let them, or if they need a special dispensation. I just don't know the rules. Grayscale has said it will sue the SEC again if it denies the conversion. If they were to do that before January 10th, I don't know if that would throw everything up in the air again. I just
for
don't
the
know.
others as well.
For everyone.
Right.
One of the things she hits on is this, remember, all of these people are, meaning these filings, are competing against each other. So she's kind of pitching her own book there with 21 shares in their filing for a Bitcoin ETF. They're going to be going head to head with BlackRock and many others, Fidelity, et cetera. But she said something specifically to Grayscale. And I'm wondering if there is a concern within this community that Grayscale could get a little bit of an upper hand because of their current positioning in it. And, is there, these kinds of comments being, taken, by someone like a Cathie Wood into consideration of maybe how investors might go into this in the future? I don't know. It seemed a little bit out of place there, but, you can kind of take it from there. I want to go to this last clip, which is where Wood also talks in the same or it's a different interview, about manipulation and how this might play into the SEC's decision. Listen in.
What were the kinds of questions they asked?
The showstopper, at least from Gary Gensler's point of view, is he thinks Bitcoin can be manipulated. And, this is a decentralized, transparent network.
All right, so that was a big statement, I think, from Cathie Wood, because she was revealing some of the question and the line of questioning that came back from the SEC to what ARK was doing around this. And the manipulation statement from the SEC, or thinking that Bitcoin could be manipulated, could be a big issue. And of course, that would have bearing on this. But I always look at it this way. Almost every IPO out there is being manipulated in some way by institutional capital moving into these spaces so quickly. So it's not something that I think would be a deal killer. And I think as we continue to see most of the experts in the community right now, and mostly from Bloomberg, from the team over there, still looking at this as a very strong position and proposition for this to be approved definitely by January 10th. Another thing right here, Wu Blockchain came in and said the SEC has delayed Hashdex's application to convert its existing Bitcoin ETF to a spot. And the SEC also delayed the application for Grayscale's Ethereum futures ETF. So they said they would delay its decision until 2024. I think a lot of people looked at this, and I think there were some things that Jeff Seifert was saying, the Bloomberg analyst, ETF analyst, was saying that this may not necessarily mean anything. Don't look at these kind of delays as anything negative going forward. I also want to jump into some new news, and that, of course, is talking about JP Morgan testing tokenized portfolios with Avalanche. This is a pretty big deal. If you guys, of course, followed our channel very long, you know we talk a lot about Avalanche. We look at it because we see it as a very interesting project and definitely an ecosystem that continues to grow. Tests were carried out under the Monetary Authority Singapore Project Guardian. This was designed specifically to enable fund managers to tokenize their portfolios on chosen blockchain. This, to me, only validates what we've already, and what many, I think, true institutional capital advisors have already said. And that is, this is going to happen. We're going to see more and more of this. And as you look here in the article, it says the blockchain stacks chosen for this proof of concept on Provenance blockchain was JP Morgan's own Onyx digital assets and Avalanche. So pretty significant when you think about the tokenization of securities, especially at this level of, I think, professional entities out there. And for Avalanche to be included with JP Morgan and Onyx, that's a pretty impressive resume for sure. All right, so further in this article, they talk about blockchain stacks obviously being proven, but one of the things they kind of focus in on here is the system that would allow the portfolio manager to manage a large number of discretionary portfolios comprising of tokenized assets. So this would be across multiple blockchains, in that it was successful. So the test was going, and you can kind of see some of the things they were doing on their interoperability, which is good because you've got Onyx right there from fund managers. The idea behind this is pretty amazing because it changes the architecture of finance as a whole. Last up on this article, they kind of hit on this, which is important. The bank also is exploring on-chain digital wallets, allowing users to store and control digital identity on its own platform. So that, again, too, gets back into the digital wallet thing that we've talked about by Cathie Wood. She's very big on that, is that there's going to be a few winners on the digital wallet ecosystem that starts to evolve out of this, especially on tokenized securities. So definitely some big things happening, not to mention a lot of the most recent news. We're going to be trying to get the Avalanche team on the show to talk about this because this could be pretty big for them in general. Speaking of that, Avalanche tweeted out right here, Citi has tested the use of blockchain infrastructure to price and execute simulated FX trades on Avalanche Evergreen subnets. This is already out there. Proof of concept from Citi is part of the Project Guardian. So a collaboration by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which they were talking about just a second ago, is now already underway. This is a big deal for them. And it's a big deal, I think, for, in general, the global financial system, because if it's happening in Singapore at this level, not even likelihood, it will make its way into the traditional asset and fund managers here in the United States, including JP Morgan, BlackRock, and so on. So you guys can see quickly, this is connecting a lot of dominoes now into the game of where tokenized securities are going. It's going to happen. Wall Street is going to be on blockchain. Speaking of that, Chainlink, of course, kind of hit on it right here. Chainlink, how tokenized assets goes global. You can kind of see a little bit there about that.
Tokenized assets, the new trillion-dollar market opportunity. But what are they exactly? Tokenized assets are digital representations of real-world things. Almost any asset can be tokenized on a blockchain. Tokenized assets are more efficient, more liquid, and more transparent. The biggest banks in the world are already exploring tokenized assets because that's what their clients want. But tokenized assets will be spread across hundreds of blockchains. That's where Chainlink comes in. It connects everything together. Chainlink is how tokenized assets go global, which is why.
All right, so one thing to note here, obviously Chainlink kind of pitching their own bag there, and the idea of an oracle, which really, kind of blends these all together. There is one scenario that could play out on this, though, and that is maybe there is only a handful of chains that truly elevate to the level of tokenized securities. And I think that would be the question, because to Chainlink's benefit is that they need a lot of chains to really participate and be able to make this worthy of Chainlink's capability and also their tech. But if this does fall down to maybe just a handful, that would be the question mark. Yes, Cross compatibility, yes, that's important, but I think it would be interesting to kind of see how this plays out. Now, on the last story right here, this of course goes into what happens to the overall market. Bloomberg analyst says that crypto space could be heading toward a $10 trillion valuation as we start to see this landscape starting to shift. Now, part of this will be just the trading volume. There's some other things they kind of hit on right here. Asset class could hit 8 to 10 trillion this cycle. I expect to see the proliferation of systematic and factor-based strategies that'll start to move in. Remember, we've got a lot of companies that would be moving into this space that have a ridiculous amount of assets under management. And there is going to be a certain compelling number that would be direct exposure. And I think every asset manager out there would say right now, if they were looking at the markets in general, they're probably going to have some exposure to these asset classes, especially when you see ETFs and things like that, playing in. Further in the article, they kind of hit on this right here. Those that believe the recent price action is down to ETF news are delusional. Q1 Bitcoin was sending the clearest of signals that the very nature of the asset allocation is changing. It's just that most weren't paying attention. I don't know how many people would not be paying attention to, the kind of growth we've seen from 16K, doubling your money. So 100% rally in 2023 so far. It's been firm hands. And remember, holders are still kind of holding on for dear life as we see ETF investors coming in after that saying, hey, we're going to ride this wave going forward. And maybe institutional is also in that box. So very interesting times right now. A lot happening in the ETF space. And we will continue to bring you guys all the good news. And of course, insights on where all of this is going, because there's a lot of things happening that are moving parts here that will affect a variety of projects. So make sure and stay tuned for that. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure and subscribe right now. Hit that like button because these are the kind of videos that we try to bring to you every day. Make sure and join into the Diamond Circle. It's one of the best places to get additional alpha. And hit me up on X @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here at TechBath.